Hey, Science 20s, we have only 2 videos left to talk about. And it's about how life gets started where there is no life and where life was removed. Now, as I said before, we really don't know, scientists really don't know where life got its start on Earth, but we have evidence on how, I guess, life can get started if there is already available life in 2 different scenarios. So the lesson today is on something called primary succession. Whoop. Okay. Well, it will be. Oh yeah, it's the final countdown. We're almost done. Okay. So there we go. So we're going to talk about primary succession. Primary succession is life moving into an area where there was no life previously. So that's like a rock scree on a mountain, and maybe it was too high to support life, but then over time, due to erosion, the mountain lowered and it got warmer. How did life get started there? That's primary succession. Okay. And then a good example of that we can find on Earth, like actual evidence that this is occurring, is in mountainous regions or in deserts where no life can survive there, and then it maybe gets a little wetter. Okay. So what are some of the steps to succession? The steps are logical in that how life moves into the area. Okay. So succession ends when the new ecosystem stops supporting the most complex life. So sometimes succession ends after step 2. There's not enough stuff in the ecosystem, water, moisture, nutrients, and that's as good as it gets. But sometimes succession can occur all the way to the very end. Now, what species show this? Mosses and lichens are probably the first things that go into primary succession. Mosses and lichens can actually grow on rocks, and they can absorb water from the atmosphere or very, very little bits of water, maybe from wind vapor. And they can actually, one of the cool things that they do is they break down the rocks into dirt. So they can eat up the rock and change the minerals, and then through their own processes, turn it into a very rich soil over time. So they basically are rock eaters, which is really cool. Okay. After mosses and lichens have been in the area for maybe thousands of years, this takes a long time, then you might see very, very, very small plants sneak in. Tiny, tiny annual plants that come back every year that can grow in either on top of the moss, on top of the lichen, or in the little bits of soil that it made. Step 3 is grasses start to grow. Grasses need a lot of soil, so they're not going to be around until there's enough soil for them to kind of start to move in there. All right. Okay, I'll have to get rid of that. And then the next ones are shrubs and bushes. Then softwood trees like pine, so needles. And finally, if you have hardwood trees with leaves, that is the top tier of terrestrial, primary succession. So primary succession can be stopped at any one of these stages, but every type of primary succession starts with mosses and lichens. These are called pioneer species. I'll talk about those more tomorrow, but pioneer species are the first things to settle in an area. They are really hardy. They don't need a lot of stuff, and they can make a go of it. Now, one of the things that I talk about every year when we talk about primary succession is our solar system. Okay, there's the Earth. Okay, now this is not to scale. There's Venus, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and so on. Okay, so this is home. As of yet, the only place in the entire universe that we know of that can support life, like you and me, trees, bugs, and slugs, is this blue dot, this tiny floating speck in the vast cosmos. It's the only thing. Now, some people are arguing that perhaps we can go to Mars and change Mars slowly into an Earth-like planet. That's actually the whole plot of a science fiction show on Amazon Prime called The Expanse. It's a really good science fiction show about how Earth and Mars and then the asteroid belt are all kind of separate civilizations. Anyways, this is not super likely, okay? Mars doesn't have very much oxygen or any at all. It really doesn't have very much carbon dioxide. So that's the two things plants need. Is there water? Yeah, there's water on Mars, but it's frozen solid. It doesn't rain on Mars, or if it does, it only rains for a very short amount of time in a very, very small band of Mars. So if you were to take things to Mars and expect them to grow, they wouldn't. So the other planet that's really close to us is Venus. Venus is a no-go. The average temperature on Venus is between 500 and 1,000 degrees Celsius. So that's hella hot. Way, way too hot. The other places we could go are on the moons that orbit Jupiter. And there's 4 of them. Well, 3 that work. Ganymede, Callisto, and Io. Possibly we could settle on those moons, maybe, but they don't have oxygen. They're even further away from the sun, and they're really, really cold. So if anywhere we go to settle, even the moon, we have to bring Earth with us. And there are some crazy schemes that would take tens of thousands of years and trillions of dollars to turn Mars into Earth by making it have an atmosphere. We don't have the technology, nor do we have the money to do that. So for the time being, the only place that has life and the only place that even can go through primary succession that we know of is this little blue dot, Earth. Okay, that's the lesson for today.